Many celebrities had visited Epstein Island who were friends of Epstein and Maxwell. Kris Jenner and the Kardashian sisters were also there. Kris was a close friend of Maxwell.
I want to start by saying it's not how Jeffrey died, but it's how he lived. And we need to get to the bottom of everybody who was involved with that, starting with Ghislaine Maxwell and going along the lines there.
We're probably facing the effects of that right now. I bet there's decisions that were made. There's influence that got moved around. There's people that support a certain narrative because they were on that list.
She was best known as Paris Hilton's sidekick. But in reality, I think that girl was on a mission. She got a taste of that world, the power, the money. You realize you can make $1 million in a single day. What does that look like? Right now, people are asking one big question about Kris Jenner. Did she build a billion-dollar empire, or did she sacrifice her daughter's safety to do it? The Epstein files might finally hold some answers. The FBI stood up at the White House and said there were tens of thousands of videos. Then the FBI went on Joe Rogan's show and claimed there was nothing there. You're going to see an actual document sitting on the Department of Justice website right now that identifies the Kardashian sisters inside a victim complaint from the Ghislaine Maxwell case. You're going to understand why Paris Hilton snapped and pointed her finger directly at Kim. You're going to hear what Ray J was really talking about when he mentioned a federal RICO investigation on a live stream. And you're going to see how Kris Jenner's entire playbook starts to look very different once you zoom out. So let's get into it because there's a lot here.
There's also a thing about power. You know, it's a power thing, to have power over people.
Sure.
And also to have power over these beautiful actresses that everybody else was lusting over.
Joe Rogan said no to Epstein, then why is he in the files? So let's start with cleaning Joe Rogan's name, and this is something that could surprise you as well. So Joe Rogan's name is indeed in the Epstein files, but not for the reason you assume. Back in 2017, a physicist called Lawrence Krauss, who had been on Rogan's show previously, sought to arrange up a meeting between Rogan and Epstein. This was after Epstein's 2008 conviction, when everyone already knew what he did, and Krauss leaned out and attempted to make the introduction. Rogan's response, "Bitch, are you high?" He then followed it up with, "What the f are you even talking about? Like, what the f are you talking about?" And that was it. Hard no. No meeting occurred.
I'm in the files for not going.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm in the files for not going. Because Jeffrey Epstein was trying to meet with me.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, and I was like, what?
I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad?
Yeah, but I would have never went anyway. It's like, it's not even a possibility that I would ever went.
But
especially after I Googled him. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? This was like 2017. One of my guests was trying to get me to meet him. I was like, bitch, are you high? Like, what the fuck are you talking?
And also to have power over these beautiful actresses that everybody else was lusting after. Joe Rogan said no to Epstein, so why is his name even in the files? Let's start by clearing Joe Rogan's name, and this might surprise you. Joe Rogan's name does appear in the Epstein files, but not for the reason most people assume. Back in 2017, physicist Lawrence Krauss, who had already been on Rogan's show, tried to set up a meeting between Rogan and Epstein. This was after Epstein's 2008 conviction, when everyone already knew what he had done. Krauss reached out to make the introduction. Rogan's response, "Bitch, are you high?" He followed it up with, "What the fuck are you even talking about?" That was it. Hard no. No meeting ever happened.
He seems more timid than I would have thought. Do you mean he means he doesn't want to go to the Epstein Island? He doesn't want to go hang out with Woody Allen and a bunch of other PDF files at Epstein Island.
Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, appears almost 2,600 times in the Epstein files. 2,600 times. Rogan said no instantly. He saw the red flags before most people were even paying attention. Sorry about Rogan so far, he seems more timid than I would have thought. What he means is he didn't want to go to Epstein's Island. He didn't want to hang out with Woody Allen and a bunch of other pedophiles on Epstein's Island. He has zero tolerance for anyone who pretends there's nothing to see here. The government said there were tens of thousands of videos, then they walked it back. Let's go back to that moment when Kash Patel went on Rogan's podcast and basically walked back everything. Pam Bondi later appeared on a follow-up show in July 2025, and Rogan wasn't holding back anymore. He asked, "Why did they say there were thousands of hours of tapes of people doing horrible stuff? Why did they say that?" He pointed to something a lot of people had already noticed before the Trump administration took over. Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino were all loudly demanding that the Epstein client list be released. All three of them were very vocal about it. Then all three joined the administration, and suddenly there was no client list, no videos, no further disclosure. Case closed. Rogan called it gaslighting. Those were his exact words. He accused the Trump administration of gaslighting the public over the Epstein papers, and this is coming from someone who backed Trump in 2024. It wasn't a political attack. It was simply, you said one thing, now you're saying something completely different, and you think nobody noticed.
Scientists, Nobel laureates, scholars, all these different world leaders, bankers, famous singers, famous actors, they're all there. So that's the way you get people to do it. You invite people to this immense, lavish celebration that with intellectual world leaders, geniuses. And you think, well, how could it be bad if all these geniuses are there?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're doing yayo, and you got some girl from some Eastern Bloc country that's rubbing your
He added, that film has a minute missing from it. Do you think we're Bobbies? What is this? And then he got to what he believes is really going on. He said, I think the cynical perspective is that at the highest levels it's all being controlled by money. Whatever that compromised organization was, they're operating another version of it right now.
It's true.
So it's not just the dogs and the cats, not just the pets.
It's not just the dogs and the cats. They're full-on vampires. And everybody still thinks I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. They're full-on vampires. They love the taste of human flesh and they drink human blood. They do, Tucker. Stop staring at me like that.
You're freaking me out, man.
So you think people just assume it's blackmail because that is how you would blackmail someone, especially underage girls.
I think it is very possible that there could have been indirect blackmail, meaning Epstein passes it on to an intelligence service, to a corporate espionage client or something, and they use that for the
A compromised organization where you give powerful individuals access to things they shouldn't have, and then you use it as leverage over them forever. That's the system Joe Rogan believes is still functioning, and it's the system that helps everything else in this story snap into place. There's an actual document on the DOJ website that identifies the Kardashians. Okay, so now let's talk about the Kardashians. I want to be straight about something before we go further. What you're about to hear comes from a victim complaint. It has not been proven in court. The people identified in it have not been charged with anything. But this document is real. You can go to the Department of Justice website right now and find it yourself. The complaint was filed in the Maxwell case. In it, the person writing states that Ghislaine Maxwell had a strong connection with the Kardashian sisters and that they helped her use the complainant's identity. The complaint goes further. It talks about pregnancy and surrogacy, claiming eggs were used for pregnancies without permission. It mentions DNA testing. It alleges that the Kardashian sisters used the complainant's name and money to promote their businesses. There's also a specific cosmetic transaction linked to Kylie Jenner and a $600 million deal. Kim is named in allegations relating to identity issues involving children. K.H. Lowe and Kendall are mentioned for allegedly having a particular interest in the complainant's weddings and name changes. The complainant admits they don't have documentation to verify all of it and are asking investigators to look into it. Look, some of this is hard to follow. The grammar in the original file is poor. It's a messy document. One commentator even pointed that out and said that's what makes it difficult to fully examine. But here what stands out. This document ties Maxwell, who was convicted of running a sex trafficking operation, to the Kardashian family, and the one thing nobody is really disputing is that Maxwell went wherever the money and influence were. That was her entire business. Rogan's thesis about the compromise system, give people access, then lock them in, doesn't require you to believe every single detail of this complaint. It only requires you to ask, how did the Kardashians gain access to every elite circle in Hollywood, business, and celebrity culture? Who unlocked those doors?
Sent me a voicemail in which she threatened me not to talk about the Epstein tape.
Anybody recognize this cabin right here that Kris Jenner's at? Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
I now hold the opinion that Kim Kardashian is a prostitute, and I'm not going to edit this opinion. Kim Kardashian is a prostitute. Her mother is a pimp.
Kris Jenner and the access economy. Here's the hypothesis that keeps spreading. And honestly, it's the type of thing that once you hear it, you can't unhear it. People are questioning what precisely Kris Jenner's plan was. Because from the outside, her entire business.
Kris Jenner and the access economy. Here's the hypothesis that keeps spreading, and honestly, it's the kind of thing that once you hear it, you can't unhear it. People are questioning what Kris Jenner's real plan was, because from the outside, her entire business model seemed to be putting her daughters in relationships and situations with the most powerful and wealthy men possible. Every single time, that was the pattern. And some are asking whether that pattern, giving young women access to powerful men in exchange for influence, money, and status, looks any different from what Epstein's network was actually convicted of doing.
Was putting her daughters in relationships and settings with the most powerful and affluent men available. Every single time, that was the pattern. And some are questioning if that pattern, giving young women access to prominent men in return for influence, income, and status, looks different from what Epstein's network was physically convicted of doing.
Good American on the outside. I've got Skims on the inside.
Wait, say that again?
I'm drinking 818 like.
Now, before anybody comes at me, there is no official recorded link between the Kardashians and Epstein's island. None. What exists is a victim complaint, online speculation, and a pattern of elite connections that people are trying to make sense of. But here's the point Rogan was getting at. The system isn't broken. It's operating exactly as it was designed to, and it protects people at the top from consequences every single time. The Epstein network was one version of it. Hollywood's access economy is another. Different packaging, same structure. The connections tying Kris Jenner to this include the family's meteoric rise during the exact era of Epstein's 2008 plea deal, their lawyer Alex Spiro, who appears in the Epstein files, and the way names like Lou Taylor, Diddy, and the Kardashians keep overlapping in the same circles. Again, none of this is confirmed, but these aren't completely random ideas either. They're patterns enough people have noticed that a victim went to the Department of Justice and put it all in writing. Paris Hilton is done covering for Kim. And then there's Paris Hilton. This part of the story is wild. When the latest Epstein papers dropped, Paris Hilton's name appeared in the records. According to people who watched what happened next, that was the moment Paris went into survival mode. Because sources say Paris looked around and asked why she was the only one being publicly dragged for this, while Kim Kardashian was right there doing the same things, in some cases, allegedly doing worse.
You were good friends.
We were good friends.
What happened? You got famous and she couldn't deal with it, right? Be honest.
If you say so.
I'm asking you.
What
was the falling out? Did you ever say to her, Paris, what's going on here?
I never did.
Why?
It was one time we just didn't speak again.
I said I had a baby with Paris Hilton over Kim Kardashian. You know, Kim was Paris Hilton.
There's a documentary called Surviving Jeffrey Epstein that includes an account of Maxwell trying to recruit Paris. The person claims Maxwell spotted Paris at a party and said, paraphrasing, "She'd be perfect for Jeffrey. Can you introduce us?" Paris has denied knowing Maxwell even though there are photos of them at events together. But here, where Kim comes in, Kim started out as Paris's stylist and assistant. She was in the background of every picture. She followed Paris everywhere. And the way insiders tell it, Kim used that closeness to break into every elite group Paris had access to, including the ones tied to Epstein and his network. Paris watched Kim become famous. Paris watched Kim become a millionaire. And Paris watched Kim quietly distance herself from all of it while Paris herself was being torn apart by the public. So Paris snapped. Sources now claim she's talking to investigators and laying out everything she's been holding back. Meanwhile, Kim's response has been litigation. She went after Ray J following his live stream tirade when he declared,
"This federal RICO though, KK and Chris, ooh, the federal RICO I'm about to drop. Anybody know Kim and cool with Kim? They need to tell her now."
Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel, two actors who have never been afraid to speak truth to power, are now said to be working together to expose Epstein's alleged cronies and the lengths some Hollywood figures went to protect Jeffrey Epstein. Because the court filings paint a frightening picture, a network skillfully managed by Ghislaine Maxwell connecting Epstein to actors, producers, executives, and modeling agencies. A culture of silence that allowed atrocities to continue for years. But despite the convictions, Mel and Jim argue that those involved remain unaccountable. So here's the question, just how deep was Hollywood's complicity, and why are Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel the ones stepping up to expose it? Hollywood is now in a state of panic after the news that Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel are teaming up to expose everyone who helped Jeffrey Epstein. The Epstein Island scandal has been one of the most disturbing revelations in recent history, a complex criminal network. But here's what most people don't realize. Despite growing public awareness, Hollywood has traditionally intimidated and silenced anyone who tried to investigate or reveal these dark truths. From Rupert Murdoch's Fox to the big studios, the message was clear: touch this topic and your career is over. Directors, actors, and producers faced pressure and blacklisting for even mentioning it. That's how intense the silence was. But Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel are no strangers to controversy. Both have suffered professional setbacks and public backlash for challenging powerful people and telling uncomfortable truths. They've been through the fire and they're still standing. And now they're exposing something far darker, that Hollywood wasn't just connected to Epstein's story, it was deeply intertwined with it. Allegedly, numerous actors, directors, producers, and even studio executives weren't only flying on his plane, they were actively working to preserve the universe Epstein built around himself. A culture of silence enabled by fear and protected by